Are you struggling to find hope? There is hope, and my guest today is Juanita. She's going to be sharing how God has worked in her life to give her hope. Juanita, this story spans quite a few years, but I'll let you begin where you feel it's most appropriate.
All right. Well, I say our time of trouble occurred about 25 years ago. And it occurred when my husband was 6 months from retirement.
Mm-hmm.
He was a pastor. We were both conference workers at that time in the BC conference. And about 6 months before he retired, I noticed that there was some change in his behavior. First, when our grandchildren visited, his reading seemed a little abnormal. He was an excellent oral reader, but he sounded more like a 5th or 6th grader or 3rd or 4th grader. And I didn't
And you
say
an
anything.
educator, so that stood out to you.
Right. I didn't say anything, but I noticed it. And then one day I came home and I was telling him about a certain church, and he could not pronounce that name. He tried 4 different ways, and it did not come out right.
You knew something was wrong.
I knew something was wrong, so I said, honey, maybe we should go to the doctor and have him check you out, because there's some little thing that's wrong.
What did he say?
Well, you know, actually, he went straight to the phone. We were both in the office. He came back in a half an hour. He said, I have an appointment for us at 2 o'clock. So I knew that he had been concerned as well.
So not a typical man who says, no, I don't need it.
No.
He was ready to go.
He was ready to go.
Well, what happened next?
Well, I had prayed about how to approach this from my own, and I had gotten a response in my brain, like a voice message, thought message that said, go to your own doctor. So when I had gone to my own doctor, the doctor said, go to his doctor. If it's dementia, the doctor will order a blood test and he will make an appointment for the neurologist. And actually, that's what happened when we went to the doctor. It was just such a sinking feeling. And yet it was...
To go to the doctor or to hear the news that followed?
To hear the news that followed.
What did the doctor share with you?
Well, the doctor first said, well, how's his driving? He asked me. And I had to tell him that it wasn't too good. It wasn't the same.
It wasn't the same.
Right. And then he asked him to count backwards by 7s. And he didn't do well. And he said, would you like to do that again? And my husband said, yes. He tried again, and he just got lost. So at that point, the doctor said,
I don't know, maybe I should see the doctor too. I don't think I can do that.
well, that's what everybody says. But the doctor classified it. He said, now, Mr. Neal, with your training and experience, I think you should have done a little better than that. He was very gentle.
So, when you got the news, how did that affect you?
Well, we went to the neurologist, and that was really kind of the news, because the neurologist said, well, it's either stress or dementia. My husband was not the stress type. And his father had Alzheimer's. He died.
So there was a history of this in the family.
When the neurologist found that, he completely changed his approach. When we got back, we were sitting in the car before we went into our work, and my husband just sort of slumped, and he said, I guess we take whatever life hands us. But you know, when we went home, we just staggered around in that house. We didn't say much, either one of us, for 3 days. We just didn't know what to say. We were trying to sort out our feelings, our thinkings, orient ourselves to what something like this could possibly mean. It was overwhelming.
And you had plans.
Well, the plans at that point didn't seem important. But yes, we did have plans.
There must have been disappointment when you thought, in 6 months we'll be retired, we can enjoy life, we'll have freedom that we never had together before, we'll be able to do things that we've been wanting to do, and then you hear this news.
Well, I'll tell you about the plans in just a minute, but I have to emphasize that those plans really weren't in the front of our minds. We felt like we were losing each other. And that was just almost more than we could bear, you know, both of us. But we, you know, prayed and picked ourselves up and went back to work on the next Monday, and I was surprised to learn that other people had noticed something too. And so it was all falling into place, a place that I didn't want it to fall.
Yes.
But he managed to finish his 6 months. He had some vacation time coming, so he finished in the office a little bit sooner. And then it came time for me to be there. I would go up on weekends, we would talk, we would plan. But where he went, I should tell you, is that we had already purchased 160 acres of ranch land. And this was about 2 years before, so there was already a hay shed built there. He had grown up on a farm. And
So he was a farmer.
he was a farmer.
Pastor farmer.
Right. You can't get it out of him. And our dream was to have the grandkids come in the summer and work with us on the ranch and, you know, have all kinds of fun.
How many children do you have?
Well, we have 4 children, and they all had children. And we all called my husband the fearless leader. And he was a real fun guy. He had been a youth director, and just we had 6 horses, and we just looked forward to this so much. So we had a house to build, and well, I just thought we shouldn't build that house, because how could we finish it? I mean, if we started, how could we finish it? But my husband was not a weak-minded man. So it was just straightforward. He was going to do this. He was completely undeterred. And that first year I didn't have too much to do because there wasn't a lot for me to do. I actually taught a year then, and that helped me keep my sanity. But I'll tell you, for 4 years, I just struggled.
4 years.
I usually journal when I have something that's bothered me, and I find when I get it out on paper and read it back, it seems a little bit different. I get a clearer perspective. I couldn't journal. I'd sit down, I'd open my page, I could not, it just didn't come. And every time I went to church, I couldn't sing. I remember the pastor on the rostrum, he would look at me and he knew what was going on. But I couldn't sing. I couldn't sing for 4 years. I cried for 4 years.
And you're a musician.
I'm a musician, right.
But you couldn't sing.
I couldn't sing. I didn't play the piano either. And
so this was a time of significant loss and depression for you.
well, it was a terrible, terrible loss. I can't say I was paralyzed because I had to keep working, you know, and work it out. But I was just by myself a lot, and it's hard to imagine unless you've been through it.
And during this time, in addition to your husband's health challenges, you also faced a period of unemployment.
Yes,
that complicated everything else.
Right at the time when he retired. And so then I was left unretired or unemployed. So there was a financial challenge there. We actually had an RV that we had purchased for to live in when he was doing the hay shed. So we had that, and we lived in that for 24 months while he built the house.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so he built the house.
He did build
He completed the house.
He got it completely built. He did the plumbing, he did the electrical, passed on the first inspection, and we actually had 3 good years with the kids, and 3 years of doing what we wanted to do.
Sounds like he was not only a jack of all trades, but a master of all trades.
Pretty much.
A farmer, an electrician, a plumber, builder, pastor.
Yeah. But I have to tell you how I really came to grip with this. I had a Nordic track. You know what that is.
A running machine,
Yep.
or an exercise machine.
Right. And so always through my life, if I'm in trouble, well, I try to do it all the time, but I exercise and my devotions, exercise and my devotions. So I would get on that Nordic track, and I had memory verses I had written on cards. I put it on there, and I memorized those, and I put my own name in it. Juanita, when you go through the fire, I will be with you. Juanita, the fire will not kindle upon you. And I just internalized those, cried my way through it, memorized, internalized. And you know, about after 4 years, I guess I finally accepted it. And that's the one thing I think is important. We can't find solutions until we can accept what has happened to us. And then we can think more clearly. And so then I realized there's a lot of things that I have to do because he couldn't do it. He did not have Alzheimer's, he had Pick's disease. And in that one of the
Did you know that at the time?
No, we didn't know that until after he had passed away. But we did know that he didn't have Alzheimer's. He never lost his memory, but he was losing his speech and language, and he couldn't verbalize. He had learned deaf language from his grandfather, so he could do the alphabet, he could do the signing, and after a while he couldn't do that. His last thing that he could do would be yes and no. That was it. And he even could not do that before he died. But where was I going with that?
Well, let me ask you a question, because I know there are people who are watching today who, because of the virus that's spreading across the world, are not able to work. They've lost their source of income. There are others who have actually lost their loved ones. You've been through both of those. What did God mean to you in the middle of that crisis?
Well, I can tell you one question that I was always asked by the health workers and my doctor: what are you doing? Who is your support? I said, my church family. And then my doctor said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I have my devotions and I exercise. She said, good. But those promises, and then it was like I had conversations with God. I would say, what shall I do about this? I had to liquidate all the farm equipment. I didn't know anything about farm equipment. I had to organize the garage sale for contents of a 20 by 40 shop. I didn't know anything about garage sales. What shall I do? The Lord would give me the answer. And you know, it was just amazing. It was not me. It was because I asked, what should I do? So when we're perplexed, let's ask, what should I do? And let's not wait till we get into a crisis. You know, sometimes when I'm working on my computer now, I said, Lord, how am I going to solve this? And the ideas come. So let's remember that God is a very present help in trouble.
And if you have been facing challenges and struggling to find that hope, the same God that Juanita depended on is available for you. He listens to your prayers just like he listens to Juanita's. You can reach him through God's Word, the Bible, just like Juanita did. And the exercise, that's a great idea also. So, God says he does not want us to be like others who don't have hope.
That's right.
You do have hope. God loves you, God cares for you, and He's always there for you. Thanks for joining us for this story of hope.